Create with me as I start a mixed media journal including gel press, watercolor, Zentangle, and a bunch of other techniques. Hey guys, it's Amber with NotableInk.com. Welcome back to the channel. I'm going to start off with a 5x7 gel press and cobalt blue acrylic paint. All of the paints that I'll be using today are from Amsterdam. And I have a soft rubber brayer here. This is the 2-inch brayer. You can certainly use a larger brayer. I tend to like my smaller one because it's the soft one, whereas my larger brayer is the hard rubber, and I don't enjoy that one quite as much. I just have, for this today, I'm just going to be using packaging that I have collected from around the house. This is like a pill blister pack that I'm using, and because you punch out the pills, you get different kind of looks on the circles. This is also some packaging. I don't even remember what this packaging was for, but one side is kind of more of a ripped texture, whereas the other side looks a little more like an open cell foam. After I let the blue dry, I'm adding Quinacridone Rose, and I'll clean my brayer on a piece of music paper. My friend Terry Wilson from Terry's Mailbox sent this to me. We were on the cut cardstock design team together, and we still exchange cardstock with each other. I also used some bubble wrap that you saw there. I let this layer dry a little bit, and I'm going to add yellow ochre. So I've added too much yellow ochre here, so no worries. I'll just brayer that off onto the music paper, and I'll be able to use this music paper as collage paper or the background of a card or other types of paper crafting projects. So I'm going to bring that texture paper back. Now, this textured packaging, I realized I probably didn't need to use a texture like this because I'm actually going to print this into a journal book that has textured watercolor paper on it. So there's going to be a lot of texture and a lot of distressing on this print. So you can see that I've added another layer of paint of white here, and then I'm going to press this into the journal. Now I ended up waiting way too long. I didn't have my journal ready to go. And so the white paint had dried quite a bit. I probably should have just added another layer of white paint because not too much of this print is going to transfer. You can see it looks pretty cool from the back side of this. And what I did is I just left the one of the acetate sheets on the back of the gel press so that I'd be able to pull it off pretty easily. So you can see my paint dried quite a bit, and you get a super distressed look when you do that. Now, if your paint is all the way dry, it's not going to pull the paint off of the gel press at all. So when you're learning how to use gel press, it's all about the amount of paint that you use and how long you let the layers dry in between each individual layer, and the paint has to be wet right before you pull the print. So that's kind of the key. Make sure your paint is good and wet before you pull your print. Now this time, I've got my journal off to the side. I'm going to add a layer of this cobalt blue to all of those bits that were left over. I put that piece of Post-it tape down because I want to use this as my title page. And I put this down almost immediately onto the journal. I'm just using a microfiber cloth just so I can make sure that it's good and stuck. If you wanted even more of your paint to transfer, you could let this dry for a little bit and just sit there. So we can see a lot more of the paint transfer this time since the cobalt blue was still wet. So I'll just use my tweezers to pull off that piece of Post-it tape, and that's what I used on the first one. I wanted to add a title to the journal, so I'm just going to call it Mixed Media, which I think is going to be pretty obvious once you open up this journal, but I wanted to have a title page, mainly because I wanted to use this new brush. So I got a set of new brushes, the Black Tulip Mix Shape brushes. Zen Art Supply sent these to me, and I'm going to be testing them out over the next few weeks in different kinds of projects. I've never used a rigger brush before. It's for lining and lettering, and you can see it has a really thin, very long bristles to it, and so I wanted to try out some lettering and see how that went. Now, I'm not a letterer, but I feel like this went pretty well, and the brush was pretty easy to use. So I attempted some faux calligraphy here with some Daniel Smith watercolors, and this is neutral tint, and I'm just thickening up the downstrokes on the second pass of kind of coloring this in. As always, all of the supplies are going to be linked in the description down below. Occasionally I will forget to link something, so if you find that there is a product missing in the list, just leave a comment down below and I'll be sure to add it, and I'll message you the link to whatever it is that you're looking for. Later, as I start to add more to this page, I'm going to regret using watercolor for this just a little bit. I probably should have used an ink instead, but I'll talk more about that later. So I'm going to move on to the Zentangle pattern. And you can see that this page over on the left looks a lot different. I ended up adding cobalt blue to the gel press again and printing over this. And I didn't anticipate that it was going to actually make it this blue. I kind of liked those warm colors of the other one, but I do like the distressed look of this. That's the nice thing about gel print is you're never going to get the same thing more than once, and it's always going to be a completely different look. I'll link the patterns that I'm using today in the description down below as well. There actually will be in the product list, even though they're not actually products. It's just an easy way for me to link everything and categorize everything. This pattern that I'm doing now is a hybrid of Dragonair. I just turned kind of the basics of Dragonair into these kind of curvy little leaves, which I think are kind of fun. I will show you each pattern that I use a couple times, and if I skip over something or cut something out, it's because it's gotten very repetitive or you couldn't really see what was going on due to where my hand was placed, and I didn't really feel like it was educational. So you'll see me cut some of this out because of that. Anytime you're tangling a scene, I think it's a good idea to have the elements overlapping each other and make sure that you're drawing behind some of the elements so that you're creating depth with a forefront and a background, and you can see that here. So I have this card panel that I created in one of my other videos. If I remember, I'll link it in the top right hand corner. I'll have to figure out which video that was from. I can't even remember. I think it was one of my WoW videos that I made a bunch of gel press prints with. So I'm just going to tear this up. They kind of look similar. So what I did with this is I did a whole bunch of gel press prints, and then I tangled these leaves both in with a Sakura Micron pen and also with a white Posca pen. So that just adds a little more interest to that element. Here I have some Amsterdam gel medium. This is with a matte finish. And I have a Nuvo spatula, and I'm just going to paste some of these down and do some collaging. And I want to do the collaging at this point because I want to be able to incorporate the tangle into these designs as well. So I want to be able to draw on top of these collage pieces. Make sure that your gel medium has dried all the way so that it doesn't clog up your pens. And here I have a Sakura Micron PN pen. PN is for plastic nib. I find these, I like the thicker line. I'm a little heavy-handed with my lines, so I really like the thick line. And the PN pen, as opposed to the regular Micron pens, are more sturdy. So you can use a little more weight. You can press a little bit firmer, and it's not going to crush that fine point nib. And the size of this nib is equivalent to a Pigma Micron 05 pen. So I'm just adding a few more sedgling here and then also more of this Dragonair, and you can see that I'm pulling it up over that collage piece to make everything a little bit more cohesive and blend together. I should mention that I'm working in an ETCHR watercolor journal. In my Daniel Smith Swatchbook series, when I reached out to you guys to find out what is the best watercolor journal, this is the one that was most recommended. And I have to say, I absolutely love it. So I got these on Amazon, and you buy them in a pack of 3. I've already started to do more watercolor swatching in one of the other journals, and I thought I would use this journal for a mixed media journal. So that's what you're seeing today. I will be doing more of the Daniel Smith Swatchbook series. Right now, I'm working on an online class that's going to be coming out in July. And along with that is going to be 2 photopolymer stamp sets that release with that for that class. I designed them specifically for that class. And so, yeah, there's been a lot going on behind the scenes. So I will get back to the watercolor swatchbook series. I think I also want to put together an online class with some of the content that's in that journal. So lots of things coming, hopefully this summer. I'm going to put on a little bit of music for the rest of this tangling, and then I'll catch you back for some watercolor of the tangles with Caran Neocolor 2 pencils. So hang with me. pages were looking really blue and I wanted to add another color, so I grabbed another gel press sheet and just collaged a few of those pieces. I don't know if I would love them, so I'll go back and work on those a little bit more later. I have a few Caran Neocolor 2 pencils here, and I'm using the color purple, and I'm just going to draw a line right at the bottom of each one of these leaf segments. And then I'll use a brush with clean, clear water and just to pull out that pigment there. And so these are water-soluble wax crayons, and they're great for mixed media and other projects. They melt really easily. Super fun to use, so they're just really easy to do coloring like this in your mixed media projects. Here I have turquoise green, and so I'm just adding that to the settling. And at first I was coloring inside of the lines, and I had to remind myself that this is mixed media, so later on you'll see me kind of draw the color outside the lines. You can see I'm doing a better job of kind of being a little messier with the shadow here. I'm using Payne's gray for the shadow. And the shadow just really helps to pop these off of the page and bring them forward, especially with these little caviar eggs here. So normally my black dot in the center is much larger. This time I made the circle around the black dot a lot larger, just as a variance on caviar to switch things up a little. So there you can see more shadowing on the left-hand page, and I'm loving the look of that. I really like how the pink gives a nice pop of color. Here you can see I start to color outside the lines a little bit, and that's where I regret using watercolor for my lettering. I'm going to have to cover that up probably with maybe some of the matte medium to make sure that it's sealed in, because if it continues to get wet, it's just going to bleed all over the place. So I'm going to use that purple for the Neocolor, and for this Neocolor, I just turned it into little flowers. And I'm going to add a little bit of gesso on top of these collage areas because I just feel like the red is so in your face, and I don't know. I don't love these red things. I think that's what it comes down to, but it's totally okay. Like it's not like it's a card where I'm sending this to someone or anything like that. It's a journal. And so it's totally okay. So I'm just going to mess it up a little bit and put some gesso right on top of it just to tone it back a little bit and I don't know, just stress some of the edges. So I've got the pill packaging back here, and you can see that some of them are really pressed in. Some of them I've tried to keep a little bit flat or tried to pop them out again, just so that there's a variance in how much paint goes on with each one of these little circles. So remember to think about, with your gel press, think about using stuff that you have around the house. You don't always have to buy things in order to create patterns on your projects. So this is page 1 and 2 of my mixed media journal, and I'll be filling up this entire journal with projects like this. So I'll be exploring different color combinations, things that work and don't work. I'm sure there'll be things that don't work that I'll share with you guys. So if you haven't already subscribed, you're going to want to do that so you don't miss the next episode. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you soon with more inspiration.